The Shillong Heart Clinic welcomes Dr. Amethyst Bauman, consultant interventional cardiologist, formerly of Vedanta, the Medicity. From preventive care to advanced cardiac procedures, your heart is in safe hands. Book now at 98630
Menteri Rangba Gajala Conrad ki sangma haba juba be short duration discussion belawanra ruba ardan mila bersoi mai MLA na nongkrem halor ka kaiphat jong expert committee halor reservation policy hakasi ba phra ka dorbar mangtangka jong yeng dorbar thawan ke jalla haka absent rek rumpang arja rio ula batai bnia halor ki jing ajimut ka expert committee kumjo igidau ba amshimla dan Pynkylla yakte ka policy Long bahaman ki chingai jimut ki tengko bar ki mukaduma yeng kashari ki rajing bishar bar ki weipat ki banta ula benrap bak Pynkylla reservation policy kaknai spanya puar kan kring pat yak Jingpeit Bniah dak ki bor ka an haswa bo menteri rangba on penkut ki jubam uba ardan ulong balak sarkar kan khot yathir ne em ki khot halor ka kaipot yak bo menteri rangba ulong bo priang ki chingai jimut ba kloiru bani thir haman la ki paragraph jong ka tai ki kaipot.
Mr. Speaker, sir. At the very outset, I would like to thank Shri Edelbert Nongrum, MLA, who has moved the 0-hour notice, and also Shri Arden Miller Basaimat, MLA, for raising a short duration discussion under Rule 50, and also would like to thank the Leader of Opposition for participating in this very important short duration discussion. So let me, if you would allow me to go into some of the background as well as the findings, I think this House would be able to understand the entire working of this very important committee that was set up. Sir, as you will recall, a committee comprising of all political parties was constituted on the 26th of May 2023 for discussion on the implementation of the reservation roster system. Sir, in the course of the meeting and discussions, the committee has recommended to the government the formation of an expert committee to review the state reservation policy. So the government notified that an expert committee will be formed to review the state reservation policy, which shall consist of experts in constitutional law, economics, sociology, demographic studies. In view of the above, a search committee headed by Chief Secretary to the Government of Meghalaya was constituted. On the recommendations of the search committee, the expert committee on the state reservation policy Meghalaya was constituted on the 12th of September 2023. So the terms of reference of the committee were: 1. To study the current reservation policy and recommend modifications if necessary. 2. To undertake wide-ranging consultation with all stakeholders and visit various locations of the state to solicit the views of all stakeholders. The committee has been given time frame of 12 months with effect the date of issue of notification to complete its task and to submit its report, recommendation, suggestions to the state government. The committee was headed by Justice Retired Moolchand Garg, the Chairman, former Judge of the Madhya Pradesh High Court. Justice Retired Dr. Satish Chandra, Member, former Judge of the Allahabad Court. Professor D.V. Kumar, Member, Professor, Department of Sociology, NEHU. Professor Chandrasekhar, Professor and Department of Fertility and Social Demography, Indian Institute of Population Science, Mumbai. Professor Subhadip Mukherjee, Assistant Professor of Economics and Public Policy in IIM. So the tenure of the committee was extended in 2 stages. Dated 25th 9, the tenure of the expert was extended for a period of 4 months with effect 13/9/24 to 13/1/25, and again further extended to 14/4/25. So the expert committee had convened various meetings in the period between November 23rd and January 25th to deliberate on various aspects of the reservation policy. These meetings provided a platform for in-depth discussion, review of existing practices, examination of relevant data, and formulation of action to be taken by the committee. So in the process, large number of communication, views, suggestions, comments were received. Approximately 1,024 letters, emails, posts, and representations from across the state. Of these, 547 were deemed substantial, while the remainder were cryptic, repetitive, or empty. Only 547 substantial representations were considered. The expert committee held public hearings in Shillong, Tura, Williamnagar, and Jawai. No person was denied the opportunity of hearing. 3rd to 5th of October 2024 in Shillong, invitations were sent to 93 participants, 93 groups or individuals, out of which 43 actually attended. From 2nd to 3rd of December in Tura, invitation was extended to 193 individuals/groups, out of which 46 attended. On the 4th and 5th of December 2024, Williamnagar, invitations were extended to 249 individuals and groups, out of which 12 attended. 6th December in Jawai, invitations were extended to 9 individuals and groups, out of which 4 attended. So after receiving these comments and suggestions from the stakeholders, the expert committee then invited these individuals who had given the comments and suggestions. So the report was submitted on the 6th of June 2025 at Meghalaya House, New Delhi, which was received by Shri D.P. Walang, IAS, the then Chief Secretary to Government of Meghalaya. So the report is structured into 4 parts, comprising a total of 21 volumes and spanning 4,667 pages across all chapters and volumes. Part 1 comprises Volume 1 and 2. Volume 1 contains 4 chapters, namely Introduction, the Tribes of Meghalaya, reference to the committee and working of the committee. Volume 2 comprises the annexures. Part 2, Volume 3 contains discussion on reservation, its historical background, and judicial pronouncements, along with annexures. Volume 4 to Volume 12 consists entirely of annexures. Part 3 comprises Volume 13 to Volume 27. Volume 13 contains discussions on representations, public hearing, and details of petitions submitted before the Reservation Policy Review Committee. And Volume 14 to Volume 27 consists entirely of annexures. And Part 4 comprises Volume 28 to 31. I stand corrected, sir. It was 18, I'm sorry. So Volume 18, so it was 13 to Volume 18 earlier, Part 3. And this is Part 4 comprises of Volume 18 to Volume 21. It's in that Roman X and I, and also I just got confused a bit. So Volume 18 contains technical inputs by members on the conceptual and historical context of reservation policy, population prospects of the state of Meghalaya, with a focus on scheduled tribes and scheduled caste, and the socio-economic status of various districts of the state of Meghalaya along with an appendix. And volume 19 includes discussion on the questions to be considered and findings of the committee and recommendations of the committee and annexures. Volume 20 and Volume 21 consists entirely of annexures. So based on the discussions, the views of stakeholders, the legal principles involved, and the mandate of the committee, the following questions have been identified for consideration in formulating the committee's recommendation. 1. Can the reservation policy be proportionate to the population of a tribe, caste, community, or class? This question addresses whether the reservation should reflect the population demographics of specific communities in the state. Second question, should the reservation policy be based on religion and minority rights? This pertains to whether reservation should be extended on the basis of religious communities or as a minority rights issue. 3. Can the committee propose extending the reservation to educational institutions in the state of Meghalaya? The committee needs to assess whether reservation should be expanded beyond government jobs to include educational institutions. 4. Can the committee propose improvements in educational standards for specific areas or communities? This examines whether the committee should make recommendations for improving educational infrastructure or standards to uplift specific communities. 5. Is it a valid recommendation to extend reservation to economically weaker sections within subclassified categories? This question revolves around the proposal of extending reservation to economically disadvantaged groups within existing categories like SCs, STs, and OBCs. 6. Should the carry-forward system remain in the reservation policy of 1972? This concerns whether the carry-forward system, where unfilled reservation vacancies are carried over to the next recruitment cycle, should continue under the existing policy. Question number 7. Should a quota within a quota system be introduced as per Supreme Court judgment in the state of Punjab versus Davendra Singh? This addresses whether the Supreme Court's judgment that allows for quota within a quota for more backward groups should be applied in Meghalaya. Number 8, is the introduction of a creamy layer concept necessary? This refers to whether a creamy layer, where economically advanced individuals within reserved categories are excluded from benefits, should be considered. Should reservation be implemented for persons with disability? And should they have separate reservation? This examines whether persons with disability should receive separate reservations in light of Supreme Court's ruling and constitutional provisions. Should residents of local area or districts be given preference in district-specific jobs? This is about whether local residents should be prioritized in government jobs based on the district they reside in. Is the resolution dated 12/1/1972 a reservation policy or not? This seeks to clarify whether the 1972 resolution constitutes a formal reservation policy or merely an administrative guideline. 12. Should the reservation roster be implemented strictly? This addresses whether the reservation roster system should be enforced rigorously to ensure that reservations are allotted as intended. 13. Should the state government streamline the recruitment system to meet public expectations? These pertains to whether the state government should improve and streamline the recruitment process to ensure efficiency and meet the public's expectation. And 14. Does the reservation policy of 1972 need any changes? This is the central question, asking whether the current reservation policy as established in 1972 needs to be modified or remains effective in its current form. So the findings for issue number 1. Can the reservation policy be proportionate to the population of a tribe, caste, community or class? There have been numerous representations by stakeholders advocating for reservation to be granted to tribes of Meghalaya proportionally to their respective population. The Honorable Supreme Court has consistently emphasized that the population of a particular community or class is one consideration in determining the percentage of reservation, but cannot be the sole criteria. The Honorable Supreme Court of India in M.R. Balaji versus State of Mysore, 1963, and Indrasoni versus Union of India has held, and I quote, the relevant factors to consider while classifying backward classes would be their traditional occupation and profession, the percentage of literacy or general educational advancements made by them, the estimated population of the community, and the distribution of various communities through the state or their concentration in certain areas, unquote. While drafting the 1972 Office Memorandum, the government of the time allocated 40% reservation in jobs to the Garo community and 40% to the Khasi and Jaintia communities. In the opinion of this committee, the government of that era, based on the data available, correctly distributed the reservation percentage after considering all relevant aspects. However, over the past 50 years, significant changes have occurred in the socio-economic conditions of these tribes. Despite these changes, it appears that the differences among three tribes remains largely the same even after half a century. The Honorable Supreme Court in Patali Makalkachi versus A. Maile Rumperumal and ORS 2021. I apologize, sir, the word is very long and complicated. I could not pronounce it well. Further observed the following, and I quote, the argument that reservation should be based solely on the proportion of population ignores the dual purpose of reservation. First, it aims to undo the historical exploitation of a community. Second, it seeks to empower the weaker sections of society. Even if a community has a smaller population, it may still be entitled to a larger share of reservation due to its backwardness. Thus, while population proportion may be a factor for consideration, it cannot be the sole criteria for determining reservation percentages, unquote. The Honorable Supreme Court in Para 810 of the judgments of Indrasoni held that reservation should not exceed 50%, except in exceptional circumstances. Justice Jeevan Reddy observed that this rule could not be relaxed in cases where populations from far-flung or remote areas who remain out of the mainstream require special treatment due to their peculiar conditions. Such relaxation must be approached with extreme caution and supported by strong justification. While the current reservation policy in Meghalaya may not fully align with the Supreme Court's guidelines, it has remained in place for over 50 years and is less likely to be subject to judicial scrutiny. But any changes to this policy would, however, be subject to judicial review, as has been held in Indrasoni and other judgments. It is worth noting that the introduction of technology, improved infrastructure, and enhanced connectivity have significantly reduced the challenges faced by populations in remote areas compared to the situation in 1992, when the Indrasoni judgment was delivered. Despite these advancements, the current policy continues to stand as a stable framework. The committee notes instances where states attempted to breach the 50% reservation cap, as highlighted in the judgments of M.R. Balaji versus State of Mysore and Indrasoni versus Union of India, resulting in their policies being struck down. Introducing these changes to the current reservation system could expose the entire policy to judicial review. Such a scenario might lead to significant disadvantages for the backward classes of the state of Meghalaya. The committee has noted similar cases where reservations exceeding 50%, whether based on population proportion or other arbitrary criteria, have been declared unconstitutional. So, recommendation on this number one question that was asked by the committee: reservation should not solely be based on the population proportion of a tribe or caste. While the population factor can be considered, the primary objective of reservation is to address historical exploitation and socio-economic backwardness. Even communities with a smaller population could be given larger stake in reservation, and a larger population cannot get the same. The prime consideration is backwardness, historical injustice, and the adequacy of representation in services. Finding number two: should the reservation policy be based on religion and minority rights? In most cases where reservations have been provided to a particular class, the criteria has been socio-economic backwardness, not religious affiliation. However, the representations received by the committee specifically highlighted that these religious minority communities are socio-economically backward. Therefore, it is argued that they should be granted the benefit of reservation. When the term religious minority is broken down, it reveals two distinct components: religion and minority. The committee reviewed the history of reservations in India as implemented by both state and central governments, but could not identify any instance where the benefit of reservation was extended solely to a minority group based on religious status. The mere fact that a community is in the minority cannot justify granting it the benefit of reservation, as it does not satisfy the criteria outlined in Clause 4 of Article 16, which specifically refers to any backward class. Even so, the Constitution of India, judgments of Honorable Supreme Court, and the sub judice status of the issue prevent the committee from making any recommendation on this matter. Recommendation number two: religious-based reservation. The reservation cannot be based on religion. The Constitution provides for reservation based on socio-economic backwardness, not religious affiliation. Therefore, the recommendation to extend reservation to religious minorities, communities is not acceptable under the current legal framework. Finding number three: can the committee propose extending the reservation to educational institutions in the state of Meghalaya? Notably, the resolution dated January 12, 1972 does not include provisions for reservation in educational institutions. The committee's authority is limited to addressing specific issues within the scope of its mandate. Suggestions, recommendations, or comments regarding whether the state of Meghalaya should introduce reservation in educational institutions were neither sought nor fall within the committee's jurisdiction. Any recommendation made on this matter would exceed the committee's authority and thus hold no significance. If the government of Meghalaya decides to address this issue in the future, a dedicated committee would need to be constituted to assess the condition of the relevant categories of people and provide appropriate recommendations. While gathering data and conducting research on the current issue, education and availability of educational facilities were among the criteria considered in reaching conclusions. The recommendation: the scope of this committee's mandate is confined to reviewing reservation in public services under Article 16(4) of the Constitution. Therefore, the issue of extending reservation to educational institutions covered under Article 15(4) lies outside the purview of the committee. The state government may independently consider this issue. Finding number 4. Can the committee propose improvements in educational standards for specific areas or communities? People from the Garo community residing in the districts of West Garo Hills, East Garo Hills, South Garo Hills and Southwest Garo Hills urged the government to improve educational standards in these districts, citing the reportedly poor state of education in the region. However, this matter falls beyond the mandate of this committee, and as such, the committee has not undertaken a detailed examination of this issue. Providing meaningful comments on this matter would have required an on-ground evaluation of these districts, which was not within the scope of this committee's work. Recommendation: although this issue falls outside the committee's mandate, it acknowledges the importance of improving educational standards, especially in the Garo districts. The state government should consider measures to enhance education in these areas for the socio-economic development of the community. Finding number 5. Is it a valid recommendation to extend reservation to economically weaker sections within sub-classified categories? Representations advocating for reservation for economically weaker sections. Quote, the Constitution 103rd Amendment Act 2019, which came into effect recently on 14th January 2019, modified Article 15 and 16 of the Constitution of India by adding 2 new clauses. Clause 6 to Article 15 with explanation, Clause 6 to Article 15 with explanation, Clause 6 to Article 16. These clauses empower the state to provide a maximum of 10% reservation for citizens categorized as economically weaker sections, who do not fall under the category of scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, or other backward classes. Reservation scheme for EWS is specifically designed to benefit individuals experiencing economic hardship who are not covered under the SC, ST, OBC categories. Under the scheme, 10% of the total cadre strength is reserved for EWS candidates, subject to certain exemptions, restrictions, and eligibility criteria. The Honorable Supreme Court has suggested subclassification and principle of creamy layer in the judgment of State of Punjab versus Devendra Singh. But if it is applied in the present case, this would be an exclusion of people from the tribe who have already benefited by the candy of reservation. If the same is introduced, it would not amount to subclassification, but it would be a sub-subclassification. The resolution has already done a subclassification in the state reservation when the tribes of the states have been divided into 3 categories. Now, a further division is not permitted by the Constitution and by the judgment of the Supreme Court. The state of Meghalaya is protected under the 6th schedule of the Constitution, and by virtue of the same, the tribes of Meghalaya are given those rights with regard to their ownership of land. This could also bring some kind of difficulty in making such claims. The committee has undertaken to study the land laws of the state, and have certain doubts that the introduction of this provision, if brought into picture, could create issues with some rural people, since the EWS, whenever and wherever introduced, also has this criteria of land holding. Imposition of creamy layer is also a double-edged sword for the demand of the people. If the same demand is accepted, there is provision of exclusion and no benefit of inclusion in a particular category. Therefore, for this, the committee has very few representations to decide this, whether the committee could suggest a possible introduction of creamy layer. For this alone, the committee has to reach to people again, and a detailed study is required to be conducted with the stakeholders as well as the analysis of data. Recommendations. The EWS category is a separate category from ST, ST and OBC. The committee concurs with Supreme Court's judgment in Janhit Abhiyan that EWS should not be linked to SC, ST or OBC categories. Therefore, the committee does not recommend extending EWS benefits to these categories. The Supreme Court's judgment in Janhit Abhiyan upholds this separation. With regards to poor in a particular category is concerned, the recent judgment of Supreme Court in subclassification talks about it, but does not give a mandate on this. Finding number 6. Should the carry-forward system remain in the reservation policy of 1972? A 5-judges constitutional bench of Supreme Court of India, in the case of Nagraj versus Union of India, upheld the 81st constitutional amendment which provided carry-forward rule under 16(4)(b). Therefore, a conjoint reading of this provision and the Meghalaya resolution of 1972 show that a provision has already been made with regards to carry forward, and no separate finding or recommendation in this regard is necessary by this committee. Recommendation. The committee supports maintaining the carry forward system as provided under the 1972 resolution, and further enhancement from 1 year carry forward to 3 years carry forward, which is also recognized by the Supreme Court. No further changes are recommended on this issue. Finding number 7. Should a quota within a quota be introduced as per the Supreme Court judgment in the state of Punjab versus Devinder Singh? The concept is closely linked to the doctrine of creamy layer. Some individuals have also conflated this issue with the categorization of low-income groups within tribes. Recently, the Supreme Court of India addressed this issue in the case of State of Punjab and ORS versus others versus Devendra Singh and others. The ruling empowers state governments to uplift communities and classes that continue to lag behind their contemporaries. The state must collect data on the inadequacy of representation in the services of the state because it is used as an indicator of backwardness. And Article 335 of the Constitution is not a limitation on the exercise of power under Article 16.1 and 16.4. Rather, it is a restatement of the necessity of considering the claims of scheduled caste and scheduled tribes in public service. Efficiency and administration must be viewed in a manner which promotes inclusion and equality as required by Article 16.1. Recommendation. The Supreme Court's judgment in State of Punjab versus Devinder Singh allows for sub-classification or quota within a quota. While this may be an option, it requires detailed data collection to ensure that the benefits reach the most deserving groups. The state government should decide whether to pursue this option after collection of detailed data as per the judgment. Finding number 8. Is the introduction of a creamy layer concept necessary? The Honorable Apex Court has observed and recorded these arguments as follows. Quote, subclassification varies from the creamy layer principle since 1. Economic advancement does not offset social discrimination faced by a scheduled caste. 2. While the creamy layer excludes the socially advanced, subclassification aims to identify within the scheduled caste those who face the maximum social discrimination. 3. Subclassification maintains certain castes and creates a preference based on qualitative inclusion, contradistinguished from exclusion of the creamy layer. And 4. Preferential treatment identifies certain castes within the scheduled caste list, while the creamy layer exclusion applies to individuals. Until and unless the principle of creamy layer is applied to government jobs, the purpose of objective of Clause 4 of Article 16 and Clause 4 of Article 15 cannot be fully realized. As a fundamental right, these enabling and beneficial provisions are designed to uplift the backward classes. And the principle of creamy layer should be implemented in the state of Meghalaya as well in the light of relevant judicial pronouncements. The introduction of creamy layer in the reservation system certainly aligns with the judgment of the Supreme Court. However, to date, no state government or central government has implemented this. In light of these developments, this committee recommends that the state of Meghalaya may consider implementing the principle of creamy layer within the reservation framework for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, following a thorough study of its implications, demands, requirements, and social conditions of the tribes. Alternatively, the state may choose to wait for the outcome of this judgment as other state governments begin to implement it. Given that Meghalaya is a tribal state, the implications of this principle would likely differ from those in other states, warranting deeper study before implementation. Additionally, it is important to note that the recommendations in the Supreme Court's judgments are advisory in nature. Therefore, this recommendation aligns with the judgment of State of Punjab versus Devendra Singh and others. Recommendation: the concept of creamy layer for OBCs as outlined in Devendra Singh judgment should be considered in the state of Meghalaya. This requires the collection of detailed socioeconomic data to categorize individuals as either benefiting from reservation or being excluded due to their socio-economic status. Finding number 9, should reservations be implemented for persons with disability and should they have separate reservation? In a landmark judgment of Indrasoni, the Supreme Court observed that not less than 4% of the total number of vacancies in the cadre strength in each group of posts shall be reserved for persons with benchmark disabilities, with 1% each allocated to persons with benchmark disabilities under clauses A, B, C, and 1% for those under clause D and E, unquote. The perusal of these office memorandums by the state of Meghalaya virtually meets the requirement of the mandate of Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Indrasoni. But the committee has drawn its attention towards various office memorandums and notifications through which the Government of India has extended horizontal reservation to widows, ex-army persons, and also given them age relaxation, and such persons can easily be adjusted against vertical reservations without upsetting the cap limit established by the reservation policy of 1972. Suggestions for improvement: enhanced monitoring, strict compliance mechanism for reservation in government institutions, awareness campaign educating PWDs about their rights and available benefits. 3, infrastructure development, improving accessibility in educational institutions, workplaces, and public spaces. Recommendation: the committee acknowledges the provision of Rights of Persons with Disability Act 2016 and the existence of office memorandum issued by the Government of Meghalaya. These already provide horizontal reservation for persons with benchmark disability. Hence, no additional recommendations are necessary from the committee on this matter. Finding number 10, should residents of local areas or districts be given preference in district-specific jobs? It is clear that except for the district of East Khasi Hills, the population concentration is dominant in the area of tribes named after the tribal population. East Khasi Hills, having a capital city of Shillong, has a mixture of all kinds of population, which not only include these 3 dominant tribes, but also other tribes, other castes, outsiders such as Assamese, Bengali, Marwaris, and others. Tribes which are dominant in the areas have secured jobs in the area. The committee also mentioned that this is a concept in a bigger state where commutation is very difficult, where the places are situated at far ends, but with the more availability of transport, this is also coming to an end. Meghalaya stands at 24th rank in the size of area in India. The office memorandum number PER 272/72/5 dated 18/12/1972 is already in place and virtually says that considering the position as regards the district level post as stated above, the Governor of Meghalaya is pleased to order that in respect of posts at district levels, where the incumbents are not likely to be transferred outside the district of original posting, there will be a combined reservation of 80% of the post in favor of Garo, Khasi, Jaintia instead of separate reservation of 40% each for Garo and Khasi Jaintia, respectively, apart from 5% reservation in favor of other scheduled tribes and scheduled castes. While selecting candidates to such posts, preferences should be given to local candidates residing permanently in the districts in which the vacancies occur. At the same time, strict adherence to the above reservation in respect of posts and vacancies at the district level, as in respect of such posts at the district level which are not transferable, the posts reserved in one district are not likely to be filled up even if reserved quota is carried forward to the following year. As such, this will create administrative difficulties and dislocation, and further, this would have a far-reaching impact on society divide also. There shall be an effort of uniting people. The migration of people not only generates the eagerness of learning new things, but also meeting and learning new things creates more opportunity. The stakeholders have not been able to showcase the logic behind this suggestion. Recommendation: the idea of prescribing higher reservation of local tribes in class C and D posts is not feasible due to migration from rural to urban. The existing office memorandum dated 10 May 2022 sufficiently addresses this concern by catering to local recruitment preferences. Finding number 11 is the resolution dated 12/1/1972 a reservation policy or not. One more objection which has been raised by stakeholders is whether the resolution of 1972 is a policy or not. Is a question not to be decided by this committee. When it compared this resolution with the resolutions, office memorandum, notification of the Government of India and other governments, it is found that even the Government of India has come up with resolutions for the purposes of determining the proportion of reservation. The committee is not duty-bound and did not travel into this aspect of the matter to find out that the resolution is a policy or not, and whether it fulfills the criteria of policy or not. Policy is not always what has been written in words, but a practice is also a policy in the state, like a foreign policy. It can never be written in words, still is a policy. The Honorable Apex Court in the case of Indrasoni also faced similar situation where the reservation was given through office memorandum, and a question was framed in this regard as to whether the provisions of Article 16(4) must necessarily be made by Parliament/legislature, unquote, has been answered by the court in para 292, 526, 552 and 336, and held that reservation can be provided by the Parliament, state legislature, statutory rules, as well as by way of executive instructions issued by central government and by state government from time to time. It is further stated that under Article 16(4), the state has power to make any provisions which may be made either by an act of legislature or by rule, or regulation made under act or in absence of both, by an executive order. Executive order is no less a law under Article 13(3). The committee threw light on few documents of the state of Meghalaya, such as Meghalaya Secretariat Manual of Office Procedure 1993, which is also an essential document in this regard, which defines the various kind of communication of the state and their relevance. Chapter 8 of this manual lays down the forms and rules of correspondences, communication, and a serial number 105 resolution is defined as under 105 resolution. This form of communication is used for making public announcements of decisions of government on important matters of policy, appointment of committees or commissions of inquiry, and of the result of the review of important reports of such bodies. Resolutions are also usually published in the Meghalaya Gazette. The perusal of this manual of Government of Meghalaya shows that the government could come up with the policy through a resolution which is important in nature. The last line of the above Article 105 also does not bind the state to publish the policy in the Gazette. Rather, it is not fundamental in nature. It has also been stated by a few of the stakeholders that the resolution dated 12/1/1972 is not a valid resolution, since the same has been passed before the creation of the state. It is also stated that the state of Meghalaya became a full-fledged state on 21/1/1972, that is after the notification dated 12/1/1972. In this regard, a perusal of few dates is necessary. The perusal of the Assam Reorganization Meghalaya Act 1969 make the picture clear that this is the Act number 55 of 1969, which received President's nod on 29th December 1969. With this, it has been stated that different provisions of the Act would come into force on different dates. The text as published in the Act number 55 of 1969 with regard to the different provisions coming into force are as under. Quote, the provisions of section 2 and 3 came into force on 12/1/1970, vide notification number G.S.R.74, dated 12/1/1970, Gazette of India, Extraordinary Point 2, Section 3, bracket 1, page 17, Section 12, 13, Section 11, 12, 13, 16, 17, 28, 29, 62, 73, and 77 on 30/1/1970. Vide notification number GSR 182, dated 30/1/1970, Gazette India, Extraordinary Point 2, Section 3.1, page 37, Section 65 on 25/2/1970. Vide notification number GSR 310, dated 25/2/1970, Gazette of India, Extraordinary Point 2, Section 3.1, page 145, and the remaining sections of 2/4/1970, vide notification number GSR 493, dated 24/3/1970, Gazette of India, Extraordinary Point 2, Section 3.1, page 375.2, page 375, 22nd April 1970, vide notification number GSR 75, dated 12/1/1970, Gazette of India, Extraordinary Point 2, Section 3.1, page 18. It clearly says that except for the specific sections, all the sections of the Act came into force on 2/4/1970. Section 5 of the Act empowers the government to take executive decisions. The committee also tried to find out the relevance of the date 21/1/1972, which says that Meghalaya became a full-fledged state on this day. This act gave Meghalaya an autonomous status since it was defected from the state of Assam. Therefore, the central government passed the Northeastern Areas Reorganization Act 1971, which created 3 states, Manipur, Meghalaya, and Tripura, and changed the boundaries of state of Assam and Nagaland, and also created union territories of Mizoram and Arunachal Pradesh. This act was enacted by Parliament on 30/12/1971. The state of Meghalaya became a full-fledged state on January 21, 1972. However, it had previously attained autonomous status on April 2, 1970. This transition was governed by legal frameworks, notably Act number 55 of 1969, which received the President's assent on December 29, 1969. An autonomous state is a state that is independent and has the power to govern itself. The provisions of this act empowers a state government to take policy decisions which it seems necessary. This does not create any doubt on the validity of this resolution dated 12/1/1972. Keeping in mind the above stated factual and legal aspect of the matter, the committee holds that this is not a correct forum for determination of this question, that the resolution of 1972 is a policy or not. Recommendation: The committee recognizes the 1972 resolution as a reservation policy, which has been in place for over 50 years. Any attempt to change or modify this policy could be subject to judicial review under the Indra Sawhney judgment. Therefore, the committee advises caution against making any further changes to this policy, as it might impact legal standing. No policy is perfect, and the same is required to be improvised time to time, which is being done in the present case. Finding number 12. Should the reservation roster be implemented strictly? It appears that the grievances of certain sections of society are not against the roster system itself, as implemented by the state of Meghalaya, but rather pertain to the manner in which Office Memorandum dated May 10, 2022, superseded by OM 14/6/2023, has been implemented. In light of the judgment in R.K. Sabharwal, the committee recommends that the roster system be operated transparently, keeping cadre vacancies in mind. The mandate of the reference to the committee dated September 12, 2023, is to suggest whether any modifications are necessary to the resolution dated January 12, 1972. The committee's mandate does not explicitly extend to recommending measures for the effective implementation of the roster system introduced on May 10, 2022, superseded by the OM dated 14/6/2023. However, since this issue is fundamental to addressing the concerns of various stakeholders, the committee observes that the proper implementation of the roster system can significantly alter the scenario that previously disadvantaged one tribe against another due to absence of such a system. Suggestions for improvement. Digitalization, developed centralized software to maintain, monitor rosters across departments. 2. Training, regular training of HR and administrative officials on roster management. 3. Transparency, publish roster details online to ensure public accountability. Recommendation. The committee supports the strict implementation of the reservation roster system, which is already in practice as per the 2022 Office Memorandum superseded by OM dated 14/6/2023. The roster should operate on a yearly basis in accordance with available vacancies. This system ensures that the reservation quotas are properly maintained and that vacancies are filled in compliance with the principles established in the R.K. Sabharwal case. Finding number 13. Should the state government streamline the recruitment system to meet public expectations? During interactions with stakeholders, including government officials, the committee encountered another significant issue: the need to streamline the recruitment process by government agencies. Stakeholders expressed that improving this system could resolve many grievances of government employees, prospective candidates seeking government jobs, and other concerned parties. While this issue falls outside the scope of the committee's terms of reference, which focus on reviewing the reservation policy of the government of Meghalaya, the committee recognizes its importance. Therefore, the committee offers the following recommendations for streamlining the recruitment process by adhering to rules and regulations related to reservation in different categories and the roster system. A. Identification and determination of vacancies. 1. Vacancies must be identified and determined efficiently and within a fixed time frame. 2. The Department of Personnel and Training should collect vacancy data from all departments quarterly. B. Advertisement of vacancies. 1. Once the quarterly data is prepared, the government should issue advertisements for filling vacancies promptly and within a specified timeline. 2. The advertisements should be widely published so that it reaches to the last person in the line. C. Timely recruitment process. 1. The entire recruitment process should be completed within a time-bound period, preferably within 1 year from the date of vacancy determination. D. Transparency in recruitment. 1. All recruitment-related processes and information should be published transparently on the websites of the respective departments. 2. It shall be published in the newspaper and shall also be pasted on the notice boards. Finding number 14. Does the reservation policy of 1972 need any change? In 1992, the landmark Indrasawny judgment by the Honorable Supreme Court of India capped the ceiling for reservation at 50%. However, the court also provided a window for tribal states such as Meghalaya to exceed this limit in specific circumstances in para number 810. The resolution of 1972, as amended from time to time, has allocated 85% reservation to the various tribes of Meghalaya. The committee has observed, based on records provided by stakeholders and the government, that there has been a consistent demand for revisiting the reservation policy in the state. Notably, in 1987, the Khasi Students' Union raised a demand to review the 1972 policy. Following this, a file for its review was processed and an official committee under the Chief Secretary was constituted. However, no further action was taken. Notably, several northeastern states implemented reservation policies that exceeded the 50% ceiling, potentially conflicting with the Indrasawny judgment. However, specific paragraphs of the same judgment acknowledge the unique needs of tribal states, thereby allowing them to breach the 50% reservation cap to address the socio-economic challenges faced by SCs and STs. The committee also reviewed the minutes of the meeting held on 10th of November 1971, chaired by then Chief Minister of Meghalaya, W.A. Sangma. It was noted that the draft of the 1972 resolution was designed not only in the proportion of the state's population but also in consideration of the tribes' inadequate representation and their socio-economic backwardness. It is important to note that the Constitution does not prescribe any specific limit to the extent of reservation, nor does it outline a definitive mechanism for determining the reservation framework. However, through its various enabling provisions, the Constitution establishes a foundation for reservations to uplift backward communities and classes. Various governments, including the central government, have time and again, by hundreds of office memorandums, have streamlined the reservation. Still, there are various discrepancies in the system, and the government and court are trying to streamline it further. As discussed above in the preceding chapters, the judgment of Honorable Supreme Court has given a ceiling limit of reservations, but the very same judgment also reads as follows, quote, "Though equal protection clause prohibits the states from making unreasonable discrimination in providing preferences and facilities for any section of its people, nonetheless, it requires the states to afford substantial equal opportunities to those placed unequally. The basic policy of reservation is to offset the inequality and remove the manifest imbalance, the victims of which for bygone generations lag far behind and demand equality by special preferences and their strategies. Therefore, a comprehensive methodology approach encompassing jurisprudential, comparative, historical, and anthropological condition is necessary. Such circumstances raise controversial issues transcending the routine legal exercise because certain social groups who are inherently unequal and who have fallen victims of societal discrimination require compensatory treatment. Needless to emphasize that equality, in fact, or substantive equality, involves the necessity of beneficial treatment in order to attain the result which establishes an equilibrium between two sections placed unequally. 282. It is more appropriate to recall that there is equality among equals, and to equate unequals is to perpetuate inequality. Unquote. In the light of these judgments, there are three questions which are required to be answered. Firstly, whether the 85% reservation of scheduled tribe is excessive. Secondly, whether the reservation given to categories of tribes of Meghalaya are in proportion to their backwardness or not. And 3, whether any change is required in the present proportion. Considering the fact and the major chunk of the population of the state of Meghalaya is tribal and others are very nominal, coupled with the fact that they are really backward, although the education and social status of these people is gradually improving, still a lot is to be done. First question, whether 85% reservation to scheduled tribe is excessive. It is correct that the present system is in conflict with the judgment of Supreme Court. But at the same time, it is protected by the same judgment, but this can be challenged before the court of law. As discussed above in the findings of question number 1, this is also to be kept in mind that reservation policy as existing in the state of Meghalaya, no matter how good or bad it is not in consonance with the judgment of Supreme Court, especially in the case of Indra Sawhney, where it caps the quantum of reservation to 50% when it is given on the basis of caste and community. Although it is protected by the same judgment to a certain extent, but an introduction of a new policy could be subject to judicial review. The present policy, as existing therefore more than 50 years, has lesser possibility of judicial review. Therefore, the committee also suggests and warns the stakeholders to make no further demands of change in the reservation policy of 1972, since it would adversely impact the present policy. If the reservation policy would have to face the touchstone of judicial review, this could not succeed before the eyes of law. Secondly, whether the reservation given in the categories of tribes of Meghalaya are in proportion to their backwardness or not. Now coming to the second question, whether the reservation given to the different categories of the tribes of Meghalaya are in proportion to their backwardness. This is very broad question, and for this the committee has gone into records which have been provided to it by the representative and government, and perusal of this entire record. It is understandable that the state of Meghalaya is typically divided into two sects for the present purpose, that is Garo region and non-Garo region. From the record available and the representations made by the people of various walks of life, organizations have not been able to guide the community the reasons or such increase or decrease in the reservation given to these categories. The only argument which has been made by these people is a proportion of population. It is repeatedly enunciated by the Supreme Court that mere population is not a criteria for deciding the percentage of reservation. There are various other criteria for the same, as it has been discussed. Thirdly, whether any change is required in the present proportion. The mandate as given to the committee suggests reaching out to stakeholders and collecting the wish and will of the stakeholders, and suggest changes in the present policy. Therefore, the committee acted upon the mandate and found out that major chunk of stakeholders do not want a change in the present policy. The total representation which was suggestive of this change are 15 in number. Out of these 15 representatives, a few of them have stated that there would be a fair competition between these three tribes. But again, the philosophy of reservation is not based on competition, but the backwardness and other criteria shall be the issue of consideration. None of these people have been able to demonstrate that the backwardness is the reason behind the clubbing of these tribes into one category. Second, 5 people have stated that the population shall be the criteria to decide the proportion of reservation. But as it has been discussed in detail earlier, this argument cannot be accepted. Recommendation number 13. The majority of the stakeholders retaining the majority of stakeholders favor retaining the 1972 policy as it stands. The committee recommends retaining the 1972 reservation as it stands. Majority of the stakeholders support this view, and any change would be vulnerable to judicial review. The committee also finds no compelling reason to modify the policy at this time. A lot has been achieved by this policy, and a lot more is required to be achieved. A proper implementation and stricter adherence could provide for better results. The policy have been improvised time to time to meet the requirement of time and need of people at large. These recommendations are made in light of legal framework, public opinion, and judicial precedents to ensure that the reservation policy continues to serve its purpose and uplifting backward communities while staying within the bounds of constitutional and judicial guidelines. The committee's recommendations aim to uphold the constitutional principles of affirmative action, address socio-economic backwardness, and ensure that the reservation system continues to serve the needs of the most disadvantaged communities in the state. It emphasizes that any change to the existing system must be carefully considered, keeping in mind legal precedents and the socio-economic reality of the tribes and castes in Meghalaya. The committee recommends maintaining the 1972 reservation policy as it is in light of these findings and judicial guidance. Mr. Chairman, sir, these are the findings and the summary of the report that has been submitted by the expert committee on state reservation policy. And as you can see, sir, the details of every aspect of the reservation policy has been looked into. And while as leaders in this august house and representatives of the people, we understand that there are aspirations and desires and demands and needs that are there from different sections and different communities. But while we do that, as a government and as lawmakers, we need to also stand as per the mandate of the law and look at all aspects that are based on proper constitutional aspects and also legal aspects. And therefore, we are examining all these aspects. We have heard out the points that have been made by all the honorable members of the House, and I also would like to echo the thoughts and ideas that have been presented by the Leader of Opposition, that at the end of the day, so we all have stood together as different tribes, as different communities, to fight for the state and to get our state at that point in 1972. And now that we have our state, it is up to us to take that legacy forward. While challenges will always be there, while needs will always be there, we have to remember one very important criteria, that the only way for us to be able to move forward, in spite of all the challenges and hurdles that come, is to stay united, is to be one, is to be people of state of Meghalaya. And that is what we should try and aspire to do. We are aware, sir, that jobs and unemployment is a major issue, not only in our state, but in the rest of the country and the world at large. But as you have seen in numerous presentations that I have made in the past many sessions, about why the need to make sure that the economy grows and how the policies and programs have been developed to take forward every single sector with the sole aim of creating more and more jobs. Just yesterday, sir, I had presented, day before yesterday, I had presented or replied to the debate on the governor's address. And I had showcased on how in the last 8 years, 3.5 lakh, almost 3.8 lakh jobs were created in different sectors, from agriculture to sports to music to different aspects in the economy. I don't have the details, but 3.8 lakh jobs were created. And that has been done. These are not government jobs, sir. These are jobs that have come up because of the growth of the economy and growth of the private sector. So hence, sir, we need to look beyond just the reservation. We need to look beyond the government jobs alone. At the end of the day, the only way we will be able to address this big concern of unemployment is to ensure that we are able to create more jobs, take our economy forward, push the private sector, promote entrepreneurship, so that our youngsters can not just job seekers, but can become job creators, sir. And that is really what we are trying to do here as a government. And as I said, while there will be challenges, while there will be emotions, while these matters will continue in the future also, I'm sure, because these are very sensitive matters, sir, we all know it. And there is no doubt that everybody feels very strongly about this. But somewhere along the line, sir, we have to come out of this. We have to move forward as a state and as people of Meghalaya together, sir. And only with that mindset will we be able to overcome these challenges and be able to take our state forward, sir. So therefore, with these clarifications and with the entire summary of the report, details of all the facts and findings that were there, sir, I hope I have been able to address most of the concerns of the Honorable MLA, sir. And with these few words, I resume my seat. Thank you, sir.
Now, mover of this short duration discussion may seek one clarification.
So will you allow other members also to seek clarification? Maybe some of them we would.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chief Minister, who had made excessive reply. Through you, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like once again to seek a clarification in this very specific subject, which is very sensitive in nature. So, may I know whether the expert committee are supposed to conduct the role of the expert committee was supposed to base on merit or in numbers. That is one. And second, sir, because it seemed that it was contradict itself with the volume 19 part 4, as it mentioned. The recommendation, the recommendation made by the expert committee, that reservation should not solely be based on the population proportion of a tribe or caste. That is one. Then on the part 4, volume 19, page 4117 on the report, the committee recommends retaining the 1972 reservation policy as it stands. And further, in the same paragraph, indicated that the committee also find no compelling reason to modify the policy at this time. So it seems that it contradicts one another. And last, through you, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to seek a clarification from Honorable Chief Minister, since I had mentioned that ultimately we are not the one who are communal, but this very reservation is communal. So I would like to know, because according to the principal resolution 12 January 1972, it implied very clearly that a reservation for vacancy, but through a roster implementation, it was applied. It was implemented through posts. So it was contradict again. So may I get a clarification from Honorable Chief Minister?
So I've got a bit confused, sir, but I'll try to clarify whatever is possible. So the first point that the honourable member had mentioned was regarding whether it was on the basis of merit or numbers. Sir, if you heard the entire report that I read, what the committee would try to do was follow a process. So in the process, they decided to meet people and take their recommendations, their suggestions, their opinions, their views. And after collecting all of that, they wrote down all the different issues that were there and then tried to address those many issues that were there in the form of 12 or 13 the issues, or they called it findings and recommendations and findings. So that's how the process they followed, sir. So therefore, in the whole process, they mentioned, because they have to mention it, sir, that there was a large suggestions and comments and remarks that came in that said that there should be no change to the reservation policy. But that is not the factor or criteria because of which they took that decision, sir. They are mentioning it because it's a part of the fact. That's what the information came in. But through the different points which I read out very exhaustively, sir, I have explained, and the points that have been mentioned, the court cases, the hearings, the Supreme Court cases, and which particular paragraph, I've read out those paragraphs mentioning that, the reservation has to be done not just on the basis of population, but is also in the basis of historical exploitation of a community, or it seeks to empower weaker sections of society, so on and so forth. So, sir, it's very clear that the committee has presented all the facts to the, while in the report, while submitting the report. But while they have submitted and given those facts, they have also explained on the basis of merit, on the basis of legal aspect, on the basis of constitutional aspects, why there should be the reservation should remain at the status quo. They have mentioned it in the report. So I think my answer or reply has clarified that part. Second, sir, I could not understand the exact points the honourable member mentioned. But, sir, if you again go through the reply, you will see that in many parts of the reply, and sir, we have taken these points from the report itself. There's not much of addition of language from our side. So this is almost, the summary of the report itself without any addition from our side, where they have tried to explain every point why it is important, and that, and they try to consider that, and they try to explain the legal points and the logics given by different groups, different organizations, different rulings, and they argued the whole point in the paragraphs and then finally gave the conclusion. So yes, sir, if you read it part by part, if you read one line, then it could make a different sense because they're referring to some statement given by somebody, and then you could read the next statement because that statement was given by maybe a particular court case. So if you read it all separately, then yes, sir, you may find some contradiction because they're quoting people. They are referring to cases. They're referring to certain laws. But at the end, after doing all of that, they said that, but while all of these arguments are there, this is what the conclusion is. So I think what is important to note, sir, is to see finally what they conclude based on all the different arguments and references that have been given. So that's the crux of what it is, sir. You cannot see or you cannot read the report only on the basis of one paragraph or only on the basis of one line. You have to read the report in total and understand the entire argument that this committee has tried to put forward to us in their report, sir. So therefore, it will be impossible for me to argue with the honourable member on one-to-one basis of one line saying that this line said this, but in the next paragraph they said something else. But that's the nature of the report, sir, which requires them to give the opinions of all different stakeholders, which is what they did. But at the end, as I said, for us, we need to read the report as a whole, sir. So therefore, that's all I can explain. But as I said, if there's more details, sir, I'll be happy to sit with the honourable member and go through the details along with our legal team also, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, since we are discussing on the recommendation of the expert committee, so may I know from the Honorable Chief Minister, before the government formally and officially adopted this recommendation, whether they will take the members of this August House also into consideration?
Suggestion has been given by LO. I'm sorry I forgot to mention that. But sir, we are definitely open to meeting honorable members. And as suggested, sir, this is a sensitive issue. We have started this process together. So we have no issue in sitting together and going through para by para and discussing all the factors that are there. And definitely, sir, we are open to sitting down with all stakeholders and taking this forward.
Habatin, page bahagi kishap, kashap plus F.
Ka plus F?
Hakabam bangibam, dunaki eki bataye kamet. Namar kata, habathiru atau kau kamlu ka umpnyang kadut, page ya kashap plus F haka jingsom. Yaki nutrient kumki vitamin bat ka ayan la icon diat bat akabatau bha. Kam kata ikadur jingki marbam ka jing mat lani ka rukom shed yaki.
Balehi banai kita.
Kadon ka we ka jing mentoy bakongsan. Ka kot ka kia. Ka nutrition bakam bha ka jing im bakam bha pendon kam daki mar ba madon ka sharp plus F menta kasni
Lawan Ra Shafi Lingba ko office jong Commissionerate of Food Safety Meghalaya.